Hey everybody, it's Booksy, and I'm just going to give you an update for November 30th on AMC. So, thank you for all of the messages today on Twitter. Big shout out to everybody who was super angry at AMC stock and decided to tell me about it. I I love that people are so emotional because it means that you care. And especially that one guy who keeps arguing with me about the purpose of TA and why I shouldn't be talking about stuff. Um, it's really odd to me that somebody would get mad about price targets, but then get mad when you don't offer price targets and call it pointless. But you can't have it both ways, right? And I've always kind of stayed away from price targets because I just don't want to be I don't want to be worshipped and I don't want to be hated. And I think that it's just kind of a silly thing. But I'm guilty of it, right? Like anytime I say like it might do this or it might do that, I'm making like subtle predictions. So if you're mad because this is going south and you didn't expect it, I totally understand. I did not anticipate this huge sell happening right now. But that being said, I also didn't know about these macro fractals until a few days ago. So what that's done for my particular outlook and TA has been pretty substantial. And so what we saw today was really interesting. You know, I noted on Twitter that I saw the fractal repeat right here and here, and I said, "Oh no, like I messed up. I didn't chart it right." And I didn't, and I had this section as kind of the bottom. And if you look at this right here and you compare it to a typical B4, which is the sell-off, right? The sell-off bottom, which would be like this region right here. If you look closely at this region right here, you will see that there's those fractal patterns, okay? There's one right there. And then another one kind of sets up here. It's a little uglier. It doesn't look as nice. But then you get this kind of simple like bottom structure that, to me anyways, looks pretty much just like what we saw. Oopsie, I messed up. I need to do that. What we see kind of over here. And I felt like, okay, like, you know, maybe this is the bottom and this was right here. I said it right about here. But I didn't notice, and, you know, if you're looking at this right here, and this is all kind of older stuff, right? Because I was thinking this was part of the T3 and all that jazz. And I still think to some degree it is, and I will get to that in a later video. I'm not going to go into that now. I wasn't seeing the big picture here, which is that this fractal and this fractal are identical, and they're just repeating. And then when I saw that, I just started looking at, wait, what's going on? Because, you know, we were lost in the micro fractals today, okay? And here, click this button. I wasn't seeing the, sort of the big picture until I started charting the macro. So on the micro fractal level, it was getting really confusing. Right around this zone, I said, you know, this looks like the T's and like what's going on. But if this looks like the T1 and T2, then this also looks like the T1 and T2, and this also looks like the T1 and T2, and this also starting to look like the T1 and T2. And then so does this, which was supposedly like the head and shoulder pattern, right? And then it starts looking a lot like this right here. And I'm just going to throw it out there into the wild. I think this fractal pattern right here is like the fractal pattern. And I haven't quite put my finger on it just yet, how it plays out. But I honestly, I've seen this 1, 2, 3 sell off. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I've seen it over and over and over and over again on this stock. And so even though I do think that what I mapped on the medium level, right, is correct, I think, and I bet you if we just looked, this fractal pattern, you see this right here, it's all the same. All right, so you get this push up, the little volcano, you get a little sell-off action. All right, so your next target, you get that almost the same thing, right? But it looks a little different, okay, when it's on the quote unquote T2. And it just happens over and over and over again. And I think it's the same. I think it's the same thing here. Look, you see that sell off, or this is an R1, right? Push, you get the little U, and then you start these kind of dome shapes. Eventually, you get to that 1, 2, 3. So I'm not going to dive too much into that in this video, but I just want you to know that I'm starting to think that the reason that it's so easy on this stock to find those similarities is because I think the base, let's just call it like the base movement from like any point A to B is a series of these fractals. And that's my short version of that hypothesis right now, but I haven't been able to test it. So anyways, what's going on? So basically, I just want to go to the anger zone and calm some people down. So I really am not very worried at all, and I can't believe I'm saying that because I was genuinely like surprised at first by this dip once we broke through here, right? And then I was thinking, well, I'm not really sure what's going on, but that's about in the time when I discovered the macro fractal, and that changed a lot because it meant that we were on something a lot bigger, right? With these fractal patterns, that it wasn't just something that repeats in a small 1 or 2 month time frame, but it repeats on like a yearly time frame. And so you see these repetitions, and they're all over the place, over and over and over again. And so again, how we get from A to B to C to D is using these fractal patterns that repeat and iterate on themselves. So this is what basically I came up with in terms of the R1 move, which is this move, okay, and the consolidation that happens. And this is one that I've used as a guide. And what this is essentially a basic Wyckoff accumulation or reaccumulation schematic. This is not very complicated if you know Wyckoff, okay? And I highly suggest you look it up and you learn about it. It's really useful stuff, especially when you're looking at this stock, because I think this is the way that AMC is being traded. And so context is really important. If you don't have the context that this has been institutional trading pattern where they're trying to accumulate shares, then something like today just looks like a bloodbath. And it is a bloodbath to some degree because, yes, they're trying to shake people out. They're trying to make people scared. They're trying to trigger all the stop losses they possibly can. They're trying to get shorts on board who think it's about to dump, right? And it's like a last minute spook, for everybody. And that's what this is right here. And I know it's not as severe, but it's the same thing, okay? It really is. And if you look at it, this is what people would have been looking at, right, in this region. And when this happens, what happens? Everybody kind of would panic, right? If you're not aware of what's going on with the Wyckoff schematic, then you get this kind of panic mode when it breaks out of a pennant, right? Or a trading pattern, okay? And maybe you weren't like this. Maybe you were looking just at, again, these channels. And so for you, you're like, okay, well, I already know this was just like a sell test and it's back in the channel. And in this case, it didn't ever come back through, right? So again, you don't get that kind of sense of, maybe not the same sense of urgency that you might get here, right? Where it's breaking into this like liquidity zone. But the fact of the matter is, whether or not it breaks in or doesn't break in, I really do think this is the fractal. And so I do think that the next move is going to be up and a push to the upside. And a lot of folks are looking at this and saying, yeah, I see that as well. And they're looking at it from different points of view. And that's pretty much all I have to say right now. I'm going to be looking into this repeating fractal pattern. I think it's probably the same as this move right here. It's just a way of pushing the stock to sort of uncomfortable regions from like higher. So like pushing it basically from a comfortable zone all the way down to an uncomfortable zone, causing like a shakeout. And I'm pretty sure that when we look at these 1, 2, 3s, we're going to see something similar as well to those microfractals that we saw. So long story of it made short is that this is a manipulated stock. Institutions want that low price. They want to do that shakeout. And then if it all pans out, we're going to bump up and get to our big runs. Okay. And it could be a stepping stone, like where you're going up, consolidating, running. It could be more sideways going up, or it could just be a big fat candle. I mean, that's what happened on the last couple of these where we've had some really big moves. Really briefly, I know that I think Rico did a video, and it's a really fun video. I would definitely go check it out if you like the fractal stuff. I liked it. I thought it was really cool. And he puts out a hypothesis that basically this region right here is the same as the region that we're currently in, and that it's just squashed. And I think he's probably right. Although I also think he might be wrong at the same time, because like I just said, these fractals have repeated, right? And this zone right here, it looks exactly like this zone over here because it's the same fractal. So if that's the case, if these fractal cycles repeat, and we know that it's repeated from here to here at least 7 times, then any kind of a sequence of up-down moves, right, from like this range to this range could look like this, right? And that's why we see it in the micro as well, playing out in the micro as well. Now, you might say, well, that's true, but I just watched your other video, and in the other video, you said that this was on the macro, that this was the R1, and this back here is supposedly like the T's. And again, I'll say it, I think that when you look at on the micro level, on the smaller level, I think when you look at what makes up these moves, I think they're basically the same. And I'm starting to believe that there's only 1 or 2 actual patterns that are at play on this stock. And it's just that the way that they're being used, so it's like you have a bunch of Legos, right? Like bricks, and you're stacking them in different ways to make different shapes to get the desired move that you want, right? And it's really not like the most complicated thing if you think about it in terms of just building blocks. Like you have this particular shape block, right? You have these set of blocks, and you can rearrange this set of blocks to accomplish, your goal. And so then they rearrange them the same way every time because it works. So you have these repeated patterns, right? You have this cycle because it's how they've arranged the blocks to get you from this top to the bottom, from this top to the bottom. They can do the same thing each time and arrange the blocks the same way because it works. All they have to do is add more, add more cell pressure, right? If the move is farther. And same with the up move. So if that's the case, then yeah, it makes sense that almost every down move, okay, is going to look basically the same. And that's sort of what you're going to start seeing on this stock as you dig deeper and deeper and deeper. So every up move looks very much the same. You get this kind of U, you see these? It's really distinct patterns. There's another one right there, okay? And there's another one right there. So I think that it's one of these things where I think that I love the video, and I like the idea of that new idea of like a megaphone kind of thing. I've not really looked into that too much. I will do some fractal comparisons. I'm going to take it really seriously. But just on like the surface level, I think that it's just how fractals work, right? Like that you're going to have, because it works, that's the way that they're going to do it. So if the stock has been traded the same way and they know this is what the algorithm does, it clicks in that this is a down move, then that's the way that the down move is going to go, right? Every time, basically. And that's why we get kind of lost in the weeds when we're looking at these down moves. They all look the same. I think it would be better, at least at this point in time, to just focus on, the macro, like where are we going to go next with the R2, but also just look at the micro fractals that we have available to us that look pretty easy to read, and just sort of look at the Wyckoff and say, okay, this is where we are. We're doing this kind of a last sell-off. We want to see that push up afterwards. That's what we expect to see. And we don't panic, even if it goes down here. I mean, even if it went down to like 27, which would be really scary, I wouldn't like that. Nobody would like that. But the point is that it could. And if it did, it would, you can look at a Wyckoff schematic, and this could be like a spring if that were the case. It could go below this point, and it could still bounce back and rock it up. I mean, that's how those things work. So I don't put a lot of, I wouldn't put a lot of fear on this move. I would just kind of look at it from a technical standpoint, Wyckoff standpoint. From a fractal standpoint, it's a little confusing, but to me, it looks a lot like that R4. It's just that it's iterating over and over and over again to try to get as farther down than, maybe it normally would. Okay. But that's how they move the stock down. So anyways, hope you enjoyed the update. I will catch you all later.